Hey everyone, this is the Hot Revenge community. Ready to listen to a new hot story? Then get comfortable and we're starting.
The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character.
The temperature had dropped to negative 15 degrees. I was 19 years old and certain this cold was going to kill me. I huddled inside the driver's seat of my worn Honda Civic, trying to inhale the frigid air that cut like small blades. Since the car battery was completely dead, the heating system was useless junk. My cell phone went dark hours earlier. I knew stopping the tremors was a terrible sign, having learned that in school. Exhaustion washed over me. I felt overwhelmingly weary. I shut my eyes just for a moment. Then, a sudden, loud pounding noise broke the quiet. It wasn't aimed at the car door, but at the ice-coated window directly beside my face. Do you ever feel like nobody sees you, maybe even your own relatives? Tell me about it below. It is strange how quickly a person's whole life can fall apart. 4 years prior, I still had my father. I had a stable home back then. My dad passed away on a Tuesday from pancreatic cancer. The illness was quick and harsh, leaving our house empty and silent. My mother did not remain in that sadness for very long. 6 months later, the familiar scent of my father's cologne was gone, replaced by the smell of her expensive new fragrance. The stillness of our home was quickly filled by the loud voice of her boyfriend, Preston. He was rich, refined, and seemed to view me as part of the household furnishings included in the sale. They married when I turned 15. It was a modest, stylish wedding. I stood away from the main event, acting only as a legal witness, not a bridesmaid. 1 week later, my mom pulled me aside. Stirring her drink, she told me that she and Preston were relocating. She explained they decided living with my Aunt Lorraine in Philadelphia would be better for my stability. I was sent away without hesitation. I stopped being her child. I was simply a remnant of her previous existence. Society Hill is the section of Philly where generations of wealth reside. The brick townhouses look flawless, the landscaping is immaculate, and the residents are totally distant. My aunt was my mother's younger sibling, and she had always harbored a bitter edge. She met me at the front door with a grin that didn't show in her eyes. My cousins, Madison and Ethan, inspected me as though I were something dirty dragged in on the sidewalk. "You get the attic space," my aunt declared, guiding me up 3 separate staircases. The room was freezing, dirty, and confined, featuring a single circular window overlooking the neighboring roofs. Later that evening, she requested a discussion. Speaking sharply, she used my full name, Gloria. She stated they were pleased to host me, but insisted I needed to learn responsibility. She claimed my parents established a trust fund for me, meaning I clearly had the ability to pay my way. I was completely confused by this information. My father worked as a high school instructor. While we weren't destitute, I didn't think we had money set aside in a trust. I doubted it. She dismissed my comments immediately. She said my mother and Preston had clarified the details. "We will begin with $650 per month for rent," she said. This was supposedly a minimal amount to teach me financial discipline. $650. I was only 15. I owned maybe $70 saved from my recent birthday. How was I supposed to afford that? "Get employment," she replied, treating it as the only logical course of action. The Morning Rush cafe nearby was hearing. My cousin mentioned their coffee tasted awful, but my aunt implied it was adequate for someone in my position. Just 2 days after arriving, I was scrubbing plates and cleaning tabletops at the Morning Rush. I worked 6 days a week, starting after classes at 3 and staying until closing at 9. My first earnings totaled $450. When I saw the check, I felt a burst of genuine accomplishment. I had earned this money myself. I took the cash home and presented it to my aunt. She put the bills directly into her costly leather purse without counting them before me. "See," she said, lightly tapping my shoulder. "That is responsibility. That feels good, right?" I climbed to my freezing attic bedroom, my hands reeking of chemical cleaner and old coffee grounds. I calculated that I had just handed over $650 for a small space where I rarely slept, in a home where I was unwanted. I still owed her $200 for that first month. That $650 monthly fee was short-lived, lasting only 2 months. My aunt intercepted me in the hallway one day just as I was leaving for my shift. Tapping a letter against her palm, she informed me that the property taxes had recently increased. She called the hike astronomical. She regretted that my rent would have to increase to $1,300 monthly, effective immediately. $1,300. I did the math in my head instantly. My work at the morning rush barely covered the original $650. There was no chance I could manage this. I don't think I can afford that, I told my aunt. She gave me her signature cold, perfect smile. Well, you will have to figure it out, won't you? Responsibility, Gloria. I felt desperate. That night, I spotted a flyer tacked up in the break room. It advertised night janitorial positions at a large financial tower downtown. The hours were brutal, 11 p.m. until 5 a.m., but the pay was good. My new existence became a non-stop cycle of exhaustion. From 11:00 p.m. to 5 a.m., I wiped down vacant cubicles and scrubbed toilets inside a silent, empty skyscraper. The only person I regularly encountered was Gabe, the night security guard, who always nodded when I clocked in. From 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., I slept in my car in the parking structure since driving back to Society Hill for just 2 hours was pointless. 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. was spent trying to stay alert during my community college lectures. From 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., I was back at the cafe, forcing smiles while pouring lattes until my face hurt. Then 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. was the drive back toward the financial district, attempting to catch maybe 60 minutes of sleep in the car before my cleaning shift began. I existed like a phantom. I ran entirely on coffee and uncontrolled fear. The only times my family saw me were when they deliberately showed up at the coffee shop, often to remind me what a failure I was. My cousins started bringing their private school friends along. Taunting me became their favorite pastime. "Oh my gosh, check it out, it's my janitor cousin," my cousin would announce, speaking loudly enough for everyone in the shop to hear. She would say I was preparing her latte just like I cleaned her bathroom. My other cousin would film me for his social media story. "Look at her," he would narrate, zooming in close on my face. "This is what happens when you lack a personality." He would use the hashtag, #ScrubLife. They usually left a small stack of pennies as a tip. People frequently ask, "Why did you stay? Why did you permit that treatment?" It is a fair inquiry, but you must realize you are dealing with more than just the abuse. You are also dealing with deep guilt. I felt indebted to them. I was residing in their perfect residence, using their costly utilities. I was the person whose parents had died, forcing others to clean up the resulting mess. I believed I was a burden. When someone tells you this every day through 1,000 subtle acts, you eventually accept it as truth. It functions like a prison without bars. Psychologists term this learned helplessness. You become so convinced of your powerlessness and lack of options that you stop seeking an escape, even when the solution is obvious. I was not living. I was merely surviving. I was barely surviving. I had managed to save $225, which I kept hidden underneath the thin mattress in the attic. That cash was my ticket out. It wasn't much, but it felt like a beginning. One morning, right after finishing my cleaning shift, I dragged myself all the way back to Society Hill. I was completely drained and desperately needed a few hours in a real bed. I climbed the stairs to my room, opened the door, and instantly froze. The room had been completely vandalized. My mattress was overturned. The small container where I kept my few pieces of jewelry was empty, and the $225 was nowhere to be found. I immediately knew my cousin was responsible. I went downstairs and faced her. She was applying her makeup at the kitchen counter, looking completely bored. "I have no idea what you are talking about," she said, not even looking up at me. "Maybe you just misplaced it. You seem so stressed lately." I then looked toward my aunt, who was seated, quietly sipping her coffee and reading the newspaper. "Aunt, someone stole my money," I stated. She let out an exasperated sigh. "Gloria, if you cannot look after your own possessions, that is not our concern. Do not accuse your cousin. She would not be interested in your little tip savings." That was the breaking point. That was the moment the final connection snapped. They didn't simply not care about me, they enjoyed my suffering. I didn't say another word. I walked upstairs, shoved my 2 work uniforms, my toothbrush, and my father's old watch into my high school backpack. I walked back down the stairs, past both of them in the kitchen, and out the front door. No one said anything or called after me. I got into my car. I had 3/4 of a tank of gasoline and about $30 left in my wallet. I had absolutely no destination in mind. I only knew that I could not stay there. I drove to the multi-level parking facility near the financial building. I found a dimly lit spot on the 3rd level, leaned my seat back, and closed my eyes. It was still better than the attic. At least here, no one expected me to be thankful. I woke up suddenly, hitting my head hard on the steering wheel. The knocking came again, louder this time. Thump, thump, thump. It sounded like an order, not a request. My heart pounded rapidly against my chest. Was it security? Were they the police? Had my cousins somehow tracked me down again? I rubbed a small, clear patch on the frosted glass. A man was standing there. He appeared older, perhaps in his 50s, wearing an expensive-looking, dark wool overcoat. He was not a police officer or a homeless person. He just looked completely serious. Then I recognized him. It was the man from the black SUV, the one I had sometimes seen parked across from the financial tower, simply watching. I had always assumed he was some high-level executive working late or maybe part of the building's private security. My blood went cold. He was likely the reason Gabe, the night guard, had been so nervous recently. I stared at him, terrified, my thoughts racing. What exactly did he want? He did not shout. He didn't look angry. He simply met my eyes through the tiny opening in the glass and spoke. His voice was muffled but clear. Gloria. How could he know my name? Unlock the door. I was too frozen and scared to think straight. I fumbled with the lock and pushed the car door open a few inches. The negative 15-degree air struck my face, causing me to gasp. Who are you? My voice sounded like a weak chirp. He did not move back. My name is Marcus. I am your uncle. I knew I didn't have an uncle named Marcus. My dad was an only child. I do not have an uncle Marcus. I am your father's brother, he stated, sounding impatient. We cannot waste time. Your father would never forgive me if I allowed you to freeze to death. Let's go. My father, he had emphasized that word. I couldn't grasp what was happening. Was the cold causing me to hallucinate? But he was real. He was extending a gloved hand toward me. I had run out of options. I could freeze to death or go with this mysterious man claiming to be my uncle. I grabbed my backpack and stumbled out of the Civic. My legs were so numb I nearly collapsed. He caught my elbow, his grasp surprisingly strong. He said nothing more, just guided me toward the enormous glass entryway of the financial building, the place I cleaned every night. My shift does not start for 4 hours, I mumbled. You don't work here any longer, he said, speaking gently. He avoided the main door. Instead, my uncle guided me to a small, unmarked side door. I always thought it was only for building maintenance. He did not use a key card. He took out a heavy, vintage brass key, turned it in the lock, and the door opened. We were not in the usual main lobby. We entered a small, private elevator area finished with marble and dark wood. He pressed the button. The doors opened. Inside, there was no standard keypad, only one button marked PH for penthouse. He pressed it. The elevator started moving quickly and silently. We passed the cubicles on floors 10 and 11, then the executive offices on 12, places I never touched. The elevator kept going higher than the building looked. The doors opened directly into a living space. It was not just an apartment, it was massive. It covered the entire top floor. Huge windows showed the lights of Philadelphia spread out below. It was warm here. The air smelled like coffee and old books. I just stood there with my backpack, melting snow onto his polished floor. Come in, Gloria, my uncle said, shutting the elevator. We have much to discuss. I sat down on the leather sofa he pointed to. The couch cost more than my car. He went to a bar and brought 2 glasses of water. My hands shook so much I spilled some water. I own this building, Gloria, he stated, looking at the city. I own the parking garage where you slept. I own the company you cleaned for and the coffee shop where you worked. I stared at him. Why would you let me do that? Because your father made me promise, he said softly. He grabbed a framed photo from a shelf. He wiped it off and showed me. It was two skinny, smiling teenagers on a broken-down van. The goofy one was my dad. The serious one was Marcus. "I am your father's older brother," he explained. "My dad was an only child," I whispered. "That is what your mother told you. She told everyone that after he died," my uncle responded, his voice growing sharp. "It made things simpler. Your mother hated our family. We were poor. We reminded her where your father came from." He pointed to the van. "That was our home for 2 years. We slept in cars. We ate gas station food. Your dad worked hard. He got scholarships. He became a teacher. He met your mother and got a respectable life. I went a different way." He gestured around. "I started with one laundromat. Your dad co-signed the loan. He gave me every dollar he had. We built this together. This building is as much his as it is mine. My dad, a businessman. Why did you let me scrub toilets if this was his?" "That was the strategy," he said. "Your father's strategy. He was proud, but he was scared. He worried you had your mother's weakness. He feared if you were just given everything, you would not learn how to fight. He made me promise not to hand over the inheritance. I had to test you. I had to see if you had his strength." He walked to the monitors and turned them on. My heart sank. It was me, dozens of clips. Me mopping the floor at 3:00 a.m., me smiling at the coffee shop while my cousins filmed. Me asleep in the car, me crying hours earlier. "I have watched you every night," he said, his voice heavy. "The black SUV was my security team. They followed you. They made sure you were safe. You watched me." I felt sick. "You watched me freeze." "It was the hardest damn thing I ever did," he snapped, facing me. I saw his pain. This was not a test from a cold man. This was a promise made to a dead brother. He was stuck. He had to keep his word to my dad, but he watched me suffer. "I did not know when to stop," he admitted, his voice breaking. "Your father said I would know. He said, let her bend, but do not let her break." But last night at -15, that was breaking. I could not keep the promise if it meant his daughter died. He would never forgive me for that. I would never forgive myself. "I am sorry, Gloria," he said. "I let it go too far, but your father would be proud. You did not break. You passed his impossible test." I was dizzy. My dad, the algebra teacher, built this empire. I do not know what to say. My dad did all this. "He was the brains, I was the muscle," my uncle corrected me. "He saw the patterns, I just made the deals. The coffee shop was his idea. He said people pay $5 for coffee if it makes them feel successful. I thought he was crazy. He was right." He turned back, serious. "This penthouse is yours. It was always meant to be yours. This building, the properties, it is all a trust your father made. I was the gatekeeper. But my aunt and my mom, they said." "They said what?" My uncle's voice chilled. "That your dad was only a high school teacher, that he left you nothing. Mom sent me to my aunt. My aunt charged me rent." "Of course," my uncle said. "Your aunt is your mother's sister. She hated me and your father since they married. She was angry your mother married a poor kid. When your father became more successful than anyone in her Society Hill family, she got toxic. She hated him for being better. When your mother dumped you, your aunt had a target for her bitterness. She knew my dad was successful. She knew he was successful, but not how successful. That was his plan. Stay quiet. Stay humble. Your life there is finished, Gloria. The test is done. Now the work begins." Work. He wanted to give you a legacy. Tomorrow you are not cleaning. You are learning to run this building. He pointed to the screens. "I saw you balancing the books at the laundromat. I saw you handle inventory at the coffee shop. You have his mind for numbers. You are a natural." "I do not know how to run a business," I whispered. "Neither did we," he said. "But you know how to survive. You know how to work. You know how to spot lies. I can teach you everything else." He walked to the desk and pulled out new keys. They were modern on a heavy keychain. "These are yours," he said, handing them over. "The penthouse, the car in the private garage, your father's office downstairs. It waited for you." I squeezed the keys. This was not charity. This was a graduation. I survived the test. I was the heir. I spent the first week learning the business. I studied my father's notes. I learned about him. He was a quiet genius. My first official act was not a big deal. It was a phone call. "Gabe," I told my uncle, referring to the night guard. "I want to do something for him." "What is the plan?" my uncle asked. "He worked the night shift for 15 years. His daughter is starting college. I want a small education trust for her. Gabe gets a raise and a full-time day shift with benefits. He earned it." My uncle smiled. "Your father would approve. It is done." When I told Gabe, the guard stared at me teary-eyed. He did not speak. He just pulled me into a hard hug that smelled like coffee. In that office, I did not feel rich. I felt useful. I understood the difference. I look at that journey now, from the frozen car to this penthouse. My story is a letter to every person who felt like they were on the outside. This is for you, the one who feels excluded, the one who gives while others take, the one who is unseen, the one called too quiet or too much. You are the scapegoat, the black sheep. Listen to me. They do not define your value. You are not invisible because they ignore you. You are not a burden. You are a resource they were too blind to use. Your strength, the resilience you built, the kindness you kept, that is your superpower. Stop waiting for their invitation. Go build your own table. And when you build it, only save seats for the people who saw your value when you were still standing outside.